Okay, guys, what's going on? So I'm sorry about the delay, but one of my horses wanted to smush me against the wall inside of my barn. So pretty much the horses are always bare. We have 8 stalls, and they're in and out. So the horse can be in its stall, and then it can go right to its paddock. But then we have 3 large separate paddocks that are just under an acre each, and they give the horse a decent amount of space to run around. And that's where 2 of our guys spend most of their time. And um, they needed to have their blankets put on because it's about to rain. So during the fall and the winter, when the weather is pretty crappy, we'll throw either a lightweight or a heavyweight blanket on them, depending on if it's raining or if it's snowing. So what that requires is me to do is, if the horse is in the larger paddock, is to take, in this case it was Journey, to take Journey out of the larger paddock, bring him inside the barn, put him on cross ties, and then throw his blanket on. But he's been really wonky lately, just put it that way. And when I bring him into the hallway of the barn, he'll start spinning on me. And when you're in a really tight space, it doesn't even have to be a tight space. I mean, you could fit an SUV through it, but when there's a 1,200-pound massive muscular animal walking in there with you and he starts acting all funny, you try to really maintain your confidence, but you're really just like crapping your pants inside. So I had to get really calm and make sure that he calmed down, take him in and out. And finally, I finally got his blanket on, which is a pain in the butt. And he's better with my wife. He's definitely my wife's horse. So took care of that. The wife was taking care of some Thanksgiving stuff, and now I'm finally able to sit down and put out this video for you. So I have a few key areas marked up on the chart that I think are worth pointing out. And from a structural standpoint, we're looking at weekly swing highs and swing lows. If you put on the Clark indicator, you could pretty much point these out as far as this open and this open with the weekly open setting on that one. But for the case of for the purpose of just expediting this, I just put the horizontals on myself. So so right now, clearly, all right, from a structural standpoint, all things are apparently down. So this was a major consolidation period. We broke down from here. This was a pretty much a textbook support and resistance retest. All right, regardless of the fact that it came up this impulsively. All right, ultimately we stalled under here. We were not able to overtake this structure. And basically what this was a massive squeeze. All right. It should be no surprise that Bitcoin does things constantly that take people by surprise and set its own personal records, right? It's constantly doing things that it's never done before. So right now, all right, lower high, okay, lower low, apparently looking like it's beginning to be printed. That remains to be seen. It's not much, obviously, in terms of this low to this low in terms of distance, but what we do have clearly is ourselves at a point of resistance again. So rather than hopping on the bull train, with everybody else because of the way something looks, I'm still playing this the way that I think that by default you should, until any type of evidence begins to show otherwise, right? For rather a case for for taking the opposite side. So what are we looking at right here? Okay, this was the current range that we painted before having this major move up. So this is the value area low, this dashed line right here. And then you can see that the area that we're more or less having trouble with is that low, okay, right here, these lows where we were wicking through. Ultimately, before we broke down below here for a very short period of time and blasted off through. And you can see that right now we're having trouble with this resistance. And ultimately, I would assume that this is where we turn back from. I'm saying that with a degree of bias because I've already shorted this. So I have put on a decent sized position. I think I got in from 7,580 to 590 something, basically on the retest after failure. So right now I am fingers crossed hoping that this does break down, but I am not under the impression again that this is just going to ultimately retest these lows down here. Okay, what it appears to be, and what I'd say, even as bearish as this is, ultimately this was a really long period of prolonged selling. Okay, nothing drastic until this point. Okay, but we did set a record for 3-day red candles in a row. So some type of relief rally is expected. Some type of pause is expected. All right, at some point you have to imagine the bears are going to let off the accelerator for a little bit. Okay, so typically, and it seems like everyone forgets about this, markets have some type of dead cat bounce, right? So um, after a period of selling like this, we could expect to find some type of relief. Now, I don't want to be as everyone else is, or be like everybody else in regards to saying that this is the bottom. Okay, that's way too premature. This is, yeah, what we do see down here, and I do have to point this out. Okay, is as I mentioned on Twitter, I posted earlier right around here. I said, looks like a resistance worth longing. And then I said, nope, never mind. Couldn't take the trade. Wasn't something that I was willing to do. I'm trying to, when I share my tweets, give you an indication of what my trades are if you're someone who just follows me on Twitter. Okay, rather than in Block-Roots, I'll say specifically, more often than not in Block-Roots, I'll say I'm shorting this or I'm longing this and so forth. So didn't look optimal to me from where I was, and I was also in the middle of not being able to spend as much time as I wanted to because, again, tomorrow we're hosting everybody for Thanksgiving, and I was not able to get in my right state of mind to really put a position on and make a clear decision. So there are signs down here, okay, that there's a decent amount of buying volume, okay? A lot of volume came in. All right, really good sign if you are looking for a temporary range to form that we might be printing that low right now. Okay, so we might just be beginning to paint what is a longer period range, all right, which will give us plenty of trading opportunities. So when I am taking this short right now, my goal is not to short back down to this low. We could get these lows again, but ultimately I have to remain conservative. So I have to say that this would likely be the area where I would take profit, okay, because things are a bit uncertain right now, okay. With these lows down here, there were a few things to notice, all right. If we were looking at things like Delta, for example, all right, if we're just going down over here, you could see that a lot of buyers stepped in, a lot of absorption, all right, a lot of selling down here, and this is what a great reversal looks like, all right. So really negative delta, beginning to taper off, a little bit of buyers stepping in, and then finally with this candle with this negative delta, this is essentially a pin bar, and this is on a 15-minute chart, but you could see that sellers were trying to push this down, but it was all absorbed. So what happens after that? More aggressive buyers step in, and this goes from being reactive to initiative. So responsive buying, all right, to initiative, to where buyers are stepping in and pushing this upward. So there is some signs that the bottom potentially can be in, but the bottom is not the bottom for the next portion of the cycle. All right, there's not enough evidence that it is. It doesn't mean that in 4 months right from now we can't be saying, well, that was this ultimately was the low of the range. But we're not just going to turn around on a dime up here and then retake out 1300. Okay, so ultimately good signs down here, and if I'm looking for any longs, it would be optimal setup where, at least if anyone wants any advice for, actually I shouldn't say that, in my opinion, I would not be looking to long at this point for obvious reasons. All right, clear higher time frame resistance at this point. Funding has gone positive again, so there might be good cause to assume that there might be some late longs off sides. Plenty of wicks up here. So if I was looking for a long, I'd be looking for a retest of this area up here. Okay, this might get a little bit front run. We could expect buyers to step in. There has been a healthy amount of buying, as I said. So by all means, excuse me, by all means, this doesn't look like it's going to just completely collapse on itself again. All right, there is, like I said, that sign that there was a good amount of absorption down here. And what we see down here also was we saw a ton of limits actually support this rather than just buyer step in, that there was a good limit wall down here that really maintained the structure. So these are all good things, right? Another thing, if we're looking at, this is one reason to be cautious rather. So earlier on when I said that this might be a long, okay, a resistance worth longing, that was right at this point right here, okay? That was right when we began to have buyers step in, and I was looking at this range right here, and what I saw was in this candle back here, not a whole lot of volume up here, so indicating that this was not the breakout to buy. All right, and you can see that on XO right now, I have the value area high of the developing day, okay, indicated right here. So the first test we had through here, no real activity up here. Price came back down. But then in this candle over here, even though we didn't break out of this high, you could see the volume really picked up. All right. If that wasn't a sign that you might want to take a short scalp in terms of rather a short long scalp, when we actually did get rejected right here. So again, this is a little bit of a divergence. So we have that positive delta. Price is rejected decently. But when we came back down to retest this area where buyers would have been looking to get long on the retest after peaking above, all right, what we saw developing, all right, so while this candle was being printed, was a ton of volume come in right here. So a ton of buying volume, all right. Obviously, there was a good amount of selling as well, but we saw the volume really pick up right here, which is, again, so remember, this red indicates that there were more sellers that were active, but just remember that this volume means that someone was on the other side of the trade. So there was a good amount of buyers right here passively absorbing all of this retest. And then ultimately what we had buyers step in again and push this upward. So, you know, from a range perspective, all right, there's a lot of two-way action going on here. But then at the top over here, again, what do we see? Okay, we see this wick to the upside. Not a tremendous amount of volume up here. All right, begins to drop off, obviously, towards the top. But again, what do we have? We have a positive delta. We have a red candle. So we do have that delta divergence that we were looking for with the CVD. So right now, you know, it can go both ways, but I'm not saying that this is by any means the bottom, okay, for any major trend change. Okay, what this looks like is a healthy bounce, and if I'm going to clean this up right now, or rather, I won't clean this up actually. Let me just get this volume off. Okay, one sec. Okay, so here's our resistance. If you want to play the range, the retest of the range, okay, that's right this area right here. Okay, and we could very well be playing a game of ping pong for a little while. So hopefully though, because at that point, you know, we have a decent range. All right, let me get rid of this. Let's put on for this structure before our breakout. All right, so ultimately what from the perspective of volume profile and value areas, we'd be looking for a retest either over here, okay, because at least at this point we could have a stop decently placed within the structure, or we could be looking to play this range, all right, if we fall back into it. Okay, so this is the midpoint right here, these being the lows, all right, this being the high if we fail up here. All right, so in that case, if we fail up here and fall back below, there's plenty of opportunities to trade within this structure as it begins to pan out. And remember, all right, this is still very early. So it's very easy for traders to assume that a move is going to happen much faster than it will. I remember what we were talking about when we were talking about a balance range forming. Okay, so what happens when a balance range is forming? All right, it forms a swing high and a swing low. Well, ultimately, in something that's been a major downtrend, we have the swing low. Okay, the major punch down. We could be forming the major punch up right now. Okay, and then from here, we'll see, you know, what are the key areas within this range that are worth playing. All right, but as I said, all right, I'm not looking to by any means be longing resistance at this point. Is it possible that we test this area, which was the value area low of this structure? So again, if I just put this, if I just put this rotation, or rather this range, back on, is it possible that we come up here? Absolutely. All right. I would hope not, because I'd be decently underwater at that point. I have a pretty conservative position on. It's not too big. It's not too small. It's just to get a position on. But ultimately, we could come up here. But still, I think that if we do come up here, that I'm getting my exit still down here. I don't see us doing anything drastic in the near future. All right. What we'll see is that, you know, there is a healthy amount of buying behind this, but do we still have the sustained volume on part of bulls to maintain this moving forward? Okay, or are they exhausting themselves right here? So that's that, guys. All right. As always, remember the higher time frame structure. So from the daily standpoint, okay, just looking at the lows of this range right here, okay, the low of this structure, all right, or excuse me, from the weekly standpoint. So from the weekly right here, all right, this was the major areas, okay, that were essentially our lines in the sand for this higher time frame structure, and all three of these happen to be right above where we currently are right now. It's not impossible, though, that we do get a move upward. All right, obviously nothing is impossible. That goes without saying, but I do think that we are beginning to print the top of this rotation that is in the making right now. So I would assume that we do come back down to test the midpoint of our launch pad at least, right? Because this is the period in which we broke out of this range right here. All right, and I would assume that we come back down here to test it, or at least have it be front run. All right, but by all means, don't get coaxed into longing resistance right now, assuming that the trend does change. All right, look at, if you need some perspective, okay, consider this. All right, let's look at this on an inverted scale. All right, if this was a bottoming structure, all right, it was printing like this would have been the breakout point. And now what does this look like? This looks like the bullish retest of a resistance flip that ultimately results in continuation. So hopefully this is helpful, guys. If you have any questions, absolutely feel free to ask. All right, remember that the inverted chart just helps us see if we are overly biased in one way, but this does paint a pretty clear picture, right? All right, this was a major trend flip right here, or rather trend change. Okay, we lost this 90 or 89-day range that we were printing. All right, this is the first retest of that area. And then what did we lose? We lost this structure right here. And this looks like it is potentially the first retest, okay, in the making. All right, so have a fantastic night, guys. If you celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope that you have a great day. All right, this is Ryan signing out. As always, exercise proper risk management and trade effectively.